Why, hello there. It's good to see you all. Thank you for clicking on this video. If you know me, you saw the title. I'm going to be doing a ranking of every J. Cole project that has been released from his humble beginnings to his most recent album, The Fall Off. And yep, it's going to be all 12 projects, if I'm not mistaken. And before we get into this ranking, I just want to also say that a couple exceptions, as always, when it comes to these rankings and tier lists itself. So, EPs like Lewis Street and Birthday Blizzard 26 are going to be excluded from this list, with the exception of one, or I should say three specific EPs, which we'll dive into in just a bit. And then, of course, live albums are excluded. And finally, to also get the rules out of the way, you may notice that I might be shifting some things around the room. Maybe the way I'm wearing or my hair is going to be changing throughout this video. It's because, again, this one, as I'm recording this video right now, I have to really sit and ponder if this is the final rankings I have set right here, right now. Alright, and here you go. As you can see, all 12 projects listed here, right now. And you're probably wondering to yourself and scratching, like, hey, what could be the least, or maybe for many, the worst J. Cole project out there? In my view, in my personal opinion, this should come to no one's surprise. I think that the weakest project from J. Cole has got to be at the number 12 spot. Might delete later. Yeah. Um, there's not really a whole lot to exaggerate with this album. There's not a whole lot that can really be said about this project that has been said already. This project, when it came out back in 2024, this was a mixtape that was supposed to, tease for the upcoming the off season, and this proved to be sadly one of J. Cole's most forgettable projects. Because when this came out, mind you, if you all don't remember what happened, because I understand things happen super fast in the day of the internet, there was a huge infamous beef between Kendrick Lamar and Drake that was also happening around this time period. And J. Cole decided to drop Might Delete later. And if everyone knows, like, there is a pretty infamous song on there with 7 Minute Drill, which was a pretty dismal performance that even J. Cole himself had to retract everything back and remove it off of stream platforms altogether. And look, again, despite that, there are at least a little bit of highlights here and there in the project, but I just don't see myself coming back to Might Delete later. It's just a project that, at the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, this is the project that I think is just going to be forgotten in the overall J. Cole canon itself. And I'll simply leave it at that. So, number 12 was kind of obvious in my humble opinion. But now, if we're gonna go with, like, what is truly, like, what I feel is the weakest J. Cole project, and I'm sorry for anyone that I might offend on this 11th placement, but I have to go with KOD. KOD, respectfully, truthfully, I give credit where credit's due, right? KOD is an album where, if you don't know what the title is, it's kids on drugs, kids overdose, kill our demons, etc. And while yes, it does dive into some really strong subject matter such as drug abuse, addiction, depression, greed, and even diving deep into the forefront of SoundCloud rap at the time, this was a project that, unfortunately, like, concept wise, I feel like hasn't, like, aged all too well in my view, because, like, over the years, like, with J. Cole trying to dive into these themes, it kind of feels like there's so many ideas in this album, but it wasn't really fully realized. Like, it feels like there's so many ideas going out over one place over the other. And yes, as a huge J. Cole fan, I do have, like, a signed album from him. I don't know if you can see that, but he actually did sign the KOD album when this came out that year. But even despite that, like, I had to put the personal bias aside and just honestly think that KOD is just not a good project. Like, there are, again, highlights with Motivate, Kevin's Heart, ATM being a really fun track. 1985, which was supposed to be the intro to the Fall Off, but of course got cut at the very last minute or so. Again, there are some highlights of it here. There are some really deep and profound moments that, again, dive into subject matters. But again, is KOD worth me going back to? Sadly, no. When you look at the other J. Cole projects that I haven't even ranked just yet. So yeah, this would definitely, in my view, be like my least favorite project from J. Cole, or like the weakest one out of the bunch, like, truthfully. But moving on, at the number 10 spot, I'm gonna go with Cold World, The Sideline Stories. Now, this one, again, another pretty big, obvious pick, but look, keep in mind, um, this project to me is like a project that was really held back because of mainly, it wasn't because of J. Cole's fault, but the record executives at the time when this album came out. Because, again, Cold War the Silent Stories, debut album from him. This was supposed to be his big breakthrough album that finally put a name on his map. And while, yes, you can argue that there are some really great highlights off of this album with Down the Dream 3, Silent Stories, Cold World, Lost Ones, which is easily the best song off the album. Again, simultaneously, you can tell that this was trying to go to a more commercial appeal, trying to appeal to like a mainstream audience. Songs like Workout, Nobody's Perfect featuring Missy Elliott, and Can't Get Enough featuring Trey Songz, and In the Morning featuring Drake were songs that are clearly being pushed for a mainstream audience. And while, again, I definitely can acknowledge that if it wasn't for the Silent Stories, J. Cole wouldn't be the big artist that he was up until that point. I can't deny that. But when you had to separate the commercial side to the artistry of things, if that makes sense, I just think that this project overall just feels like J. Cole is definitely there. We still see the J. Cole that we first heard of from his first three mixtapes, but with that being said, it clearly was being held back by something, and you can really tell by the final end result as you keep listening to his album over and over again. All right, but moving on, we go on to our number nine spot. At the number nine spot, we are going to now finally put in the off season. Again, off season, really good project. I think that for the time when this came out, this was clearly paying homage to his first three mixtapes that made him a household name. And honestly, truthfully, for any hardcore J. Cole fans, you could really switch these two rankings around if you wish. But I just think the off season is much, much stronger because while it is a short album at the end of the day, it does have a lot of strong lyrical forethought, a much more stronger production value that was clearly felt compared to where KOD last left off. And this feels like the J. Cole that we come to know and love at this point in time. And while this was a really short album, I would argue it's probably the shortest in his entire discography, outside like the Truly Yours EPs, of course. This still has like a lot of strong commentary and highlights that really gives off like a little bit like the warm up era to an extent. Songs like 95 South, My Life featuring 21 Savage and Maury, Punching the Clock, 100 Million, Pride is the Devil of Lil Baby, which surprisingly was a really great song for its time. Even like the interlude track proved to be super good, and a song from the Lewis Street EP would end up on here with Climbback, which was super, super well deserved, and I'm glad it made it to the final cut of this album. So again, really good project all around, but to me, the one thing that was holding this album back, and it's pretty obvious because this is something that I really am used with J. Cole, is that I wish this album was a lot longer. It just felt like this was a teaser, like an appetizer of what was to come, but we didn't get like the full main course entree of what we come and to expect from J. Cole, unlike the other projects that we have here that's unranked at the moment. But yeah, that would be my number nine spot. At the number eight spot, this is where we're gonna get a little bit divisive and some contention throwing in the air. But at the number eight spot, I'm gonna have to go with J. Cole's The Come Up. Yeah, this one I really had to. I actually hesitated there for a second, but I would actually put The Come Up at this spot here because again, this is J. Cole's debut mixtape. This project is now going to be a perfect debut mixtape. Again, I know there are instances in the past where you have rap artists that makes like one of the most critically acclaimed and most influential mixtapes out there. And again, there are a ton of examples from the likes of other artists like ASAP Rocky or Joey Badass with their debut mixtapes, right? The Come Up on the other hand by J. Cole, while this isn't like bad like per se, this again was in my view when you listen to this mixtape, The Come Up, this was basically the blueprint, the foundation of what was to come of J. Cole's career. Again, you have amazing, iconic songs that would be referenced over and over again throughout J. Cole's entire career from that point forward. From songs like Simba, Dawn and the Dream, College Boy, Split You Up, Dead Presidents. There's a ton of songs over here that you get a lot of bang for your buck. The only thing that's really holding this thing back at the end of the day is the DJ on point on here. But I mean, it's supposed to give off like you just bought the weirdest, dirtiest mixtape out there, right? I'll simply leave it at that. But the come up is at the end of the day is still a must listen to if you really want to get the full J. Cole experience before you listen to his other two amazing mixtapes later on down the line. From here though, this is where it's gonna get really rough. So I would say like from this point forward, this is where we have albums that are defined as like some of the best that J. Cole has to offer in his discography. So comfortably at the number 7 spot, looking at what we have so far, I'm gonna go with For Your Eyes Only. Yeah. For Your Eyes Only, I think the best way I can summarize this album in a nutshell is think of 2014 Forest Drive, but it's like the polar opposite of that said project. I mean, I guess if you want to compare it emotionally, that's how I at least feel when listening to For Your Eyes Only, because this album is filled with a lot of like strong lyrical forethought by J. Cole. Again, this came out super suddenly out of the blue, which was to be expected from J. Cole when he did drop his previous album around this time period as well. But again, this project has some really strong themes of gang violence, depression. Mainly, this album's like really depressing, man. It's one of the saddest albums you're gonna listen to in J. Cole's discography. That you really just get to sit with his thoughts and feel every word, every lyric being thrown at you in the face. And again, I understand Four Eyes Only may not be like a project that's going to appeal to every mainstream fan itself, but for the longest time, I've always seen a lot of people say like, okay, outside of 2014 Forza's Drive, what would be J Cole's best project? And everyone would always point out For Your Eyes Only because it was just the album that somewhat preceded that album's successor. And again, can we not forget that the song that was infamous with the song Neighbors did sample a pretty iconic Forbidden Fruit sample from Born Sinner and flipped it on its head, which was like shocking when people finally found out about it. Again, so many lyrical forethoughts, so many production values that were super skeletal that really showcased like J. Cole and going in a much more different direction production wise around. And this was like the forthcoming of what was going to be added into what I feel came off of his latest record. And yeah, you can argue this is like Born Sinner 2.0, but as you'll see down the line, there's a reason why this is ranked at the number 7 spot. Because at the number 6, and honestly, I might as well get number 5 out of the way on the same ranking, I'm gonna put in at number 6 Born Sinner, which should be right here. And then we're going to throw in the biggest curveball for a number 5 ranking. And it's going to be all three, yes, all three Truly Yours EPs. And look, I know this is confusing, but as I mentioned, we're talking about all three Truly Yours EPs on my video talking about this. There is a Truly Yours 3 EP. It did come out from Born Sinner itself later on. And I want to highlight these two EPs specifically with the Truly Yours cycle. So again, just note that these three EPs here represents Truly Yours, if that makes sense. And this is Born Sinner right here. I think that to summarize this entire ranking from 5 to 6, this was an era of J. Cole where we saw him slowly but surely improving. Again, you have to understand that when J. Cole's 2011 Cold War the Silent Stories dropped, a lot of people liked it, but then a lot of his hardcore fans didn't really like that he was trying to go for a mainstream sound. They was trying to change it up to appeal to a different audience that first blew him up in the first place, which was his hardcore mixtape fans during his mixtape era. So as a result, J. Cole will go on this journey to making these Truly Yours EPs, starting off with Truly Yours 1, which proved to be in my view, like one of J. Cole's like first ever instance where we get to see him take a much more bigger risk production wise this time around compared to what he did with Sideline Stories. Lyrical foreplay that is still being felt to this day. Again, I re-listened to all three of these bitches recently, and I can tell you they're some of the best, if not one of the most underrated works that you're gonna get from J. Cole's discography to this day. Between the three Truly Yours EPs, I think Truly Yours 2 is easily the best one. Like it's the strongest out of the bunch with Cole Summer, Kenny Lofton, Chris Tucker, Head Bussa. Again, you know the track list. I'm not gonna regurgitate the same thing over and over again. And while yeah, you can argue that like Truly Yours 3 is the weakest of the Truly Yours EP series, honestly, in the grand scheme of where when this came out with Born Sinner, I feel like it gels really well with the other two EPs when looking back at this. And then, of course, Born Sinner, which is the culmination, the build up after teasing us with two EPs. He drops Born Sinner, and this proved to be a huge different pace from what we last saw from J. Cole's Silent Stories. And this was probably, in my view, the moment that J. Cole's transition into the artist that we come to know and love and appreciate was finally to full fruition. And I gotta say, man, like at the end of the day, you could really switch this and the True Leaders EPs around in this spot, but I feel like this slot for 5 and 6 specifically has to go for these projects here in general. They fit in here in the grand scheme of things, and at the end of the day, these are projects that like if you really want to know like why J. Cole may be like the lyrical forefather that it comes to love, this is the projects to explain why. And again, I'm not going to regurgitate every single off of Born Sinner. It's pretty much an iconic album. A lot of dark production moments, a lot of lyrical foreplay, a lot of iconic singles from Power Trip, Crooked Smile, Forbidden Fruit, She Knows, Miss America off the Truly Yours 3 EP. Again, I could be here all day talking about it if I have to. And now, you want to know something? Even though I love Born Sinner, and for the longest time, Born Sinner and Truly Yours has always been like fighting for like my top three positions. It's always been these three projects right here that have proven to be like, if not the project that I always refer to as my top three favorite J. Cole albums. But ladies and gentlemen, at the number four spot, there is an album in my top three at one point that has now been dethroned because of J. Cole's newest project. But at the number four spot, I now gotta put the warm up at number four. I know, crazy, shocking, but listen, hear me out on this for once. J. Cole's The Warm Up is not a mixtape that you can just fuck with right off the bat. Well, let me rephrase that. This mixtape is still incredible. It is amazing. This is without doubt, again, the hugest jumps of leaps that we saw J. Cole go from, again, his come up mixtape up to the warm up. And this showcases J. Cole going to a much more serious direction this time around. He has a lot more lyrical forethought. His production is a lot more original this time around. There's like little to like no samples being sampled in the warm up. There are samples over here that are pretty synonymous, obviously, but it's not like super all over like it was with the come up. This to me felt like when you listen to the warm up, this feels like a full on fleshed out project, like an album that could go toe to toe with a lot of J. Cole's mainstream albums here. And the warm up, at least at the time when Dat Piff was around, it got freaking viewed and streamed over millions of times. And again, the warm up for anyone that's a huge J. Cole fan was the mixtape that actually got him recognized, specifically for the song Lights Please, which got him the record with Jay Z, etc., etc. So again, so many iconic songs over here that just are super infamous in the J. Cole canon, from songs like Can I Live, Grown Simba, Dead Presidents 2, which easily outshined the first Dead Presidents from his first mixtape, which is like, whoa, holy shit. Dreams featuring Brandon Hines, which actually plays a role into a song that was pretty infamous in Born Sinner. Um, Heartache, Get Away, Till Infinity, Last Call, which is a really cool homage in his own way of doing like a Last Call song from Kanye West's 2004 College Dropout. This mixtape has everything you want in J. Cole. Again, a lot of lyrical foreplot. You also get to hear a lot of like the early melodic moments that you get to see and witness from J. Cole that will come to fruition in his later projects. But again, I strongly recommend to give the warm up a shot because this is a mixtape that I always tend to spin back every now and then, and I consider the warm up and to an extent Friday Night Lights one of the greatest mixtapes to ever come out in hip hop ever. And I'll simply leave it at that because now we're at the top three. And as you can see, we only have three albums left. And this is where it's going to get really, really divisive for some. And I think after thinking it through, taking a good night's rest, I think at the number three spot. For the longest time, I had this at the number one spot, but now it's at the number three, and it's 2014 Forest Hills Drive. I know, look, 2014 Forest Hills Drive cannot be understated. This is undoubtedly, at one point, J. Cole's best studio commercial album. I mean, I have the bad boy myself for a reason. Again, went double platinum, no features, it's just J. Cole with a dream, with productions, etc. And yes, we have a 10-year anniversary edition of that. And because of that, like that does what in a way it carried over. It could have been to number one, but honestly, truthfully, I'm gonna go based solely off of the original album it was released in. And like I said, the album is still incredible. It's still emotional. This to me was like again another huge change of pace from J. Cole from where we last left off from Born Sinner. And this was finally J. Cole finally releasing everything that we come to know and love, and he wasn't being held back by record execs. He wasn't being held back by high expectations to follow up on a much better album. He actually was just now going in his own lane, going at his own pace, and giving us a project that is worth noticing, worth talking about. And again, this album contains with nuts to butts like little to no like low points. If you want to count Note to Self, of course, but Note to Self is just like a roll credits song that is like the longest off the album. That's really all I gotta say about that. But outside of that one, there's like little to no like low points on this album. You have a lot of really nice, fun, bumping tracks, and you have a lot of really nice emotional tracks, such as the infamous "Apparently," which is really, really emotional and showcases his love to his hometown state of North Carolina. And again, this project is just one of those projects that, for many J. Cole fans, would be their number one favorite album. And again, it's been my number one for the longest time, but now there is a project out there that actually surpassed it in every way, shape, and form. And now we get into the last two rankings. And the last two rankings, I really had to sit and ponder on these for quite a while now because you have one album here with The Fall Off, which has proven to be one of, if not my favorite J. Cole album now in his main discography. And then you have Friday Night Lights, which is proven to be one of, if not the greatest mixtape to ever been conceived and created. Similar to its own right to the warm up, of course, but there can only be one position, and I think I know where I would place these. So at the number two spot, I'm gonna actually have to go with this album here. Number two, The Fall Off, which, like I said, isn't a recency bias thing, but let me explain after. When I put at the number one spot, Friday Night Lights. Oh, yeesh. I cannot drag these for some reason. But yeah, my rankings here, I'll say leave it at this. The Fall Off for me is like everything you come to know about and love about J. Cole, everything that I've talked about up until this point from like the Born Sinner, Truly Yours era up until 2014 actually does apply to The Fall Off. Everything you come to know and love about J. Cole, all of his strengths, his weaknesses, are all in full display on The Fall Off. And like I said, there are some low points off the album, which again I am aware of, and it's not a perfect project given that this is a double album experience. But The Fall Off is just one of those special projects that, for me, for many years to come, if I keep re-listening to it over and over again, I know this album's going to completely stick with me for many years to come. I also think that this is, as I stated in my video talking about The Fall Off, I think that this is undoubtedly one of the greatest hip hop albums to come out of this decade so far. One of the greatest hip hop albums. And again, need I say more? So many lyrical foreplot. The production on this album feels like it's a super strong leaps and bounds from what we last have seen J. Cole in years, mind you. Completely overshadows his last three projects that he released otherwise. And overall, this is like everything you come to know about J. Cole and appreciate when you listen to the Fall Off. But of course, at the number one, with Friday Night Lights, this project, as I mentioned, is a masterpiece when it comes to mixtapes and what J. Cole was as an artist at the time. And I just cannot look down upon this mixtape. Again, for many, many years, this was always in the top three conversation, and now I could comfortably say I would put this on my number one spot. So many deep lyrical forethought moments that continue from the warm up, if not a lot better, a lot more um, crisper per se. Production is off the charts. It's amazing. It gives a lot more emotional depth. There's features off of this thing, which again, the warm up prior had no features or little to no features, if I'm not mistaken. Whereas this has tons of features from Wale, Omen, Drake, and then a big ass like cipher freestyle in the final track with Looking for Trouble. And again, I say less to why Friday Night Lights is my number one spot. It's a great mixtape. It's a must listen project. And this is like really to me the true gateway to becoming a huge J. Cole fan. And look, at the end of the day, to wrap this up, this ranking here may not be perfect, and I understand that. And some people are gonna say that, oh, you put the fall super high up there, that's recency bias. Hey man, if you know how I've been listening to these projects, again, I've been listening to every single one of these projects up until the release of the fall off in preparation and also in preparation of this video. And I can say that this is without a doubt my ranking of every J. Cole project, at least as of right now. So again, I think comfortably the number one position is never going to change, but I have a strong feeling that maybe at some point as I get older, these rankings are going to change as I get older. Maybe the fall is going to be number two, by the way. It could probably be at the number five, number seven spot. Who knows? But from what I can tell you right now, I think that that this to me is my completed J Cole ranking as it stands as of right now. And yeah, just want to simply talk about this and break down this really challenging ranking video that I had to make for a while. And yeah, that's it. I'll see y'all in the next one. And once again, J Cole, I salute you, dog. See you in the next one. Later.